Good day and welcome back to our YouTube channel. It's me again, Teacher Ronel. Before we proceed with our discussion, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more upcoming videos. For today's lesson, we are going to talk about third quarter music of the Romantic period. We are going to talk about the characteristics of Romantic music. Second, the famous composers of Romantic period of music and their works. Objectives. At the end of this lesson, the learner are expected to: number 1, describe musical elements of given Romantic period pieces. Number 2, narrate the life and works of Romantic composers. Number 3, sing themes or melodic fragments of given Romantic period pieces. Music of the Romantic period. Year 1820 to 1910. Romantic period is described by some musicians, composers, and researchers around the world as a cultural movement that stressed emotion, imagination, individualism, and freedom of expression. It was characterized by expanding the formal structure within a composition and making the pieces more passionate and expressive. Nationalism is one of the main features of this era. This is evidently shown in some compositions made by Romantic composers, one of which is the Polonaise of Frederick Chopin, a dance composition for piano which is famous in Poland until today. In addition, the composer focuses mainly on individuality of style and expressive aims and subjects. Motions, variety of musical style in compositions, freedom of expressions are only a few things that characterize the music of the Romantic period. It was during the heights of popularity of Ludwig van Beethoven, one of the great composers of the classical period, made a great distinctions to change the pace of composing music by bridging the music from classical to Romantic era. The culture of extensive music education in Europe extends from the classical period and explored more in this era. Orchestra grows in number and became limitless. Composers explored instrumentation, and many compositions were inspired by emotions in addition to a musical theme. There are some facts about Romantic musical period that everybody should know. The piano music is in free forms such as fantasy, rhapsody, ballad, and nocturne, and program music was expressed in tone poems and symphony fantastic. The music was used to tell stories and express ideas. Most of the composers were proud of their country's music and often used folk songs in their works. Violin and string music. Niccolo Paganini. Niccolo Paganini was born on October 27, 1782 in Genoa, Italy, in the family of 6 children. His musical skills started with playing the mandolin at the age of 5. He eventually transferred his training to the violin at the age of 7 with different renowned violin professors in Italy. His violin teachers could not keep up with the progress of his violin skills, that he kept on transferring from one violin teacher to another, and was therefore filled with all their influences. Paganini became the most famous violin virtuoso in the world. However, together with his fame came the rumors that said that his amazing violin skills were a gift from the devil and that he sold his soul in exchange for those skills. His compositions inspired a lot of other composers such as Franz Liszt, Frederick Chopin, and Robert Schumann, to name a few. Some works of Niccolo Paganini. Number 1, La Campanella. 24 Caprices for Solo Violin, Opus 1. Concerto Number 1 in E flat, Opus 6. 15 quartets for guitar and strings trio, the Carnival of Venice. This is Niccolò Paganini. Let's proceed in piano music. One of the important features in the development of music during the Romantic era is the piano innovations. Classical era made significance in piano through the composition of sonatas made by Ludwig van Beethoven and other classical composers. But it was reinvented and developed by some Romantic composers like Frederick Chopin and Franz Liszt that was shown in some of their compositions. Frederick Chopin. Frederick Chopin was known as the poet of the piano. He was born on March 1, 1810 in Zelazowa, Poland. He was considered as world-renowned pianist and composer. He was known for his originality in regards to piano. Chopin composed almost primarily for the piano, and some of his most well-known compositions are Fantasy in F minor, Opus 49, Revolutionary Etude, Opus 10, Number 12, and 24 Preludes, Opus 28. Frederick Chopin began to play piano at the age of 4. He composed Polonaise at the age of 7. He studied piano at Warsaw Conservatory under Wilhelm Warfel, and most of his music was influenced by Polish folk music. He finished his formal education at the higher school in 1829 and soon traveled to Europe, giving concerts in places such as Vienna, Munich, Paris, and London. He wrote almost exclusively for piano. In 1831, Chopin arrived in Paris to further his career, and he met other legendary composers such as Franz Liszt, Felix Mendelssohn, and Robert Schumann. During this time in Paris, Chopin met and married the famous French writer George Sand, and later became a source of inspiration as well as a maternal figure in Chopin's life. In the latter part of Chopin's life, his health began to decline and was diagnosed with pulmonary tuberculosis. Chopin died on October 17, 1849. This is the picture of Frederick Chopin. Piano works of Frederick Chopin. Ballad is a verse form usually consisting of 3 stanzas and 8 or 10 lines each, along with a brief envoi, with all 3 stanzas and the envoi ending in the same one-line refrain. Etude, a piece composed for the development of a specific point of technique. Mazurka, a Polish dance resembling the polka, frequently adopted as a ballet form, usually in triple time signature. Nocturne, an instrumental composition of a pensive, dreamy mood, especially one for the piano. Polonaise, a stately march like Polish dance, primarily a promenade by couples. Prelude, an introductory performance, event, or action preceding a more important one. Waltz, a piece of music for this dance. Impromptu, a short composition specially for piano, performed in an offhand or extemporized style. Scherzo, a musical movements of playful character, typically in ABA or ternary form. Sonata, compositions for one or more solo instruments, one of which is usually a keyboard instrument, usually consisting of 3 or 4 independent movements varying in key, mood, and tempo. This is a picture of Frederick Chopin. Franz Liszt. The best word that describes the work of Franz Liszt is virtuosity. He was known as the virtuoso pianist and composer and busiest musician during the Romantic era. which include playing and studying in Vienna and Paris at the same time, touring throughout Europe by giving concerts. Liszt was born in the village Dobrojan, Hungary. He displayed remarkable talent at a young age and easily understands sight reading through the effort of his father as the first teacher at age 6. A turning point came when in his early 20s, Liszt heard the virtuoso violinist Niccolo Paganini perform, so he decided to dedicate himself doing piano music as what Paganini has done for the violin. Most of the people from his time considered him as the generous composer by sharing both time and money to the orphans, victim of disasters, and the many students he taught music for free. Piano works of Franz Liszt. Grand Etude after Paganini, 12 Transcendental Etudes, Sonata in B minor, Years of Pilgrimage, 3 volumes, Operatic Fantasies after Bellini, Mozart, Verdi, and Wagner, among others. Arrangements of the nine Beethoven symphonies. Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody. This is the picture of Franz Liszt. Robert Schumann. One of the famous romantic composers that worked intensively between music and words is Robert Schumann. He was a composer, music critic, and considered himself as the heir of the original creative tradition of Beethoven and Schubert. Robert Alexander Schumann was born in 1810 in Zwickau. His father wanted his son to study law, and in 1821, Schumann went to Leipzig to study law. But he spent most of his time in Leipzig understanding and enjoying musical and literary circles through the effort of Frederick Chopin, who took some time to teach Schumann to play piano. It was also this time when he wrote some of his first piano compositions. He eventually convinced his family that he should put aside law and in favor of a performing career. In 1830, Schumann went to live with Wieck in Leipzig. He soon developed a problem with his hands, effectively ending his dreams as a pianist. It was in 1834 when Schumann founded the music journal Neues Script for Music, wherein he edited and wrote music criticisms for his publication. He wrote numerous works, young composers, and one of which was the performance of Frederick Chopin in Paris, France. It was journal Schumann often wrote under 2 pseudonyms: the Eusebius, his sensitive lyrical side, and the Florestan, his fiery, stormy side. Piano works. Abegg Variations, Opus 1, 1830. David Bundler's Dance, or the Dances of the Band of David, Opus 6, 1837. Carnival, Opus 9, 1835. Fantasy Stock, Opus 12, 1837. Kressleriana, Opus 16, 1838. Kinderszenen, Opus 15, 1838. Program music. One of the distinct characteristics of Romantic music is the unique feature of instrumental forms called program music. It is an instrumental music that conveys image or scenes, music that tells a short story without text or lyrics, and imaginative ideas fully developed through the imaginative effort of a great and genius composer, Hector Berlioz. In his composition, Symphonie Fantastique, or also known as Fantastic Symphony, Berlioz showcased the important features in his composition in creating tone, color, which was never heard. He treated the orchestra like a beautiful creation and assembled hundreds of musicians to produce powerful sound. In his composition, he made tone color as the basic part of his musical language. Hector Berlioz is a French romantic composer born on December 11, 1803. At his young age, he learned to play guitar and flute but never became skilled in any musical instrument. His father was a physician, and he was sent to a medical school to be like his father, but it ends up in studying music. One of the famous musical compositions made by Hector Berlioz is a 5-movement symphony called Symphony Fantastique. This is the 5 movements of the Symphony Fantastique. The first movement, the title is Reversi or the Passion. The tempo of the first movement is largo, slow, introduction, allegro agitato, y appassionato assai, or agitated and very impassioned allegro. The second movement, entitled A Ball. The tempo is allegro non troppo. The second movement is a waltz. The form of the second movement is in ternary or ABA form. The third movement, entitled Scene in the Country, the tempo is adagio waltz. The form is ABA coda form. The fourth movement, entitled March to the Scaffold, the tempo is allegro non troppo. The form is composed of 2 different themes. Fifth movement, entitled Dream of a Witch's Sabbath, the tempo is larghetto allegro. The form is, this is the most fantastic of the movement. Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky. Ballet, according to the www.dictionary.reference.com, is a theatrical entertainment in which dancing and music, often with scenery and costumes, combine to tell the story and establish an emotional atmosphere. Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky's music was known for his ballet music. He was born on May 7, 1840 in Votkins, Russia. He first studied law in his youth and became law clerk in St. Petersburg in his 20s. He rebelled and began to study music at the conservatory also in St. Petersburg. His name was transcribed into English name and was called Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky. As a big fan of Mozart, Tchaikovsky studied compositions with Anton Rubinstein and moved to Moscow and started teaching at the new conservatory. The early works of Tchaikovsky was not memorable because he feels a little frightened to his teacher Anton Rubinstein, but later became famous after he composed the musical film Phantom and Romeo and Juliet. Despite of his personal struggle in marriage, he continues his musical career in New York and conducted his work. He experienced great deal of fame in the last 10 years of his life and later died because of drinking unfiltered water from which he got the cholera. His music is characterized through the movement heard to some of his ballet composition. As a musician, he composed haunting melodies and used great deal of folk music in his symphonic works. His music was known for being both too beautiful and too depressing. Famous compositions of Tchaikovsky: Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, The Nutcracker, Romeo and Juliet, 1812 Overture, Symphony No. 2, Symphony No. 6, Pathetic, Piano Concerto No. 1. That's all. Thank you for watching and have a nice day everyone and keep safe.